Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is another in my practice session series for the EX342 Red Hat Certified Specialist in Linux Diagnostics and Troubleshooting exam. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone who's watching, if you haven't subscribed, to click the subscribe button and ring the bell when you do, so you can be aware of when new content comes available. Also, a reminder that these are my practice sessions for the exam. I am going through each of the listed objectives from Red Hat and trying to either explain the concepts behind the objective or do some examples of whatever the objective is asking. And at the end of the video, I'll do a little self-assessment. Hopefully, I will feel confident with whatever the objective is, but if not, I still have just under 2 weeks to do a little bit of brushing up and filling in some knowledge gaps before the exam. Since I'm still learning the material, these should not be considered tutorials, nor should they be considered any type of authoritative training material. I put these out on the internet in hopes that those that are also preparing for the exam might get some ideas of things that they can create on their own to prepare. But again, these should not be considered authoritative, nor should they be considered tutorials. So continuing with the diagnose and troubleshoot system startup issues objectives, we're going to look at regain root control of a system. So this is basically resetting your root password, which I know you have to do for RHCSA. All right, so we've SSH'd into Lab Server 2, and what I'm going to do is initiate a reboot of the server and then swap over to the console, because this is something that you have to do on the console to make happen. So let me do shutdown-R. Now I'm going to bring up the console, and just a second ago I pressed the up arrow to stop the timer, and we are presented with our grub menu. Now there's a couple of things. Or at least what I remember originally being taught, was that you pick whichever kernel you want. We'll do rd.break. But what I have seen before in actual practice is having to do this with the rescue kernel. So I'm going to try this with the tried and true way that I learned way back when. And if that doesn't work, we'll basically do these same steps, but with one of the rescue kernels. All right, so what we're going to do is go to the end of our Linux line. We're going to add rd.break, which is going to interrupt the boot process. Control X to continue that boot. And so we're in an emergency mode now. If I do the ls, we see sysroot, and we sort of see what would normally be a root file system, but we're not. This isn't a true, fully booted Linux system. The root file system that we know and love is mounted as sysroot. In the boot process, bootloader hands stuff over it. You get into the initramfs, which is your initial little root file system that gets loaded at sysroot, and eventually this is mounted again actually as the root file system. But for the purposes of recovering the password, we need to remount sysroot as read-write. Currently it's mounted as read-only. And you would see that if I just do mount. I'm not sure if less is even available. It is available. We'll find sysroot. You're not going to be able to see a cursor on the screen, but if you look at this, you'll find where sysroot is mounted, and it is mounted with RO. Yeah, it's the very last line. You see type XFS mounted read-only. So we're going to mount-O remount with read-write /sysroot. And then what we need to do is actually change root to make sysroot be root, which will give us access to passwd. So chroot /sysroot. I'm just going to clear my screen, get back to the top. And we're going to do passwd for root. I'm going to change it to monkey123 with a capital M to make it be secure. Oh, really? Will it let me do it? It did. Well, hopefully it did. We'll find out. Now, one thing to keep in mind is since we have altered the etc shadow file, the SELinux context is not going to be correct. And I think there's some kernel parameters you can pass during boot to turn off SELinux, but What I do, and what I was taught way back when, is we will create a hidden file at root called auto relabel, which was going to tell SE Linux, hey, we need to relabel all the files on the system, but the most important thing that we're getting is the Etsy shadow file relabeled. Then we exit and we continue with the boot. Exit again for that, and let's see if this works. Now it says this takes a while. It can, for a relatively small system, it's not going to take forever, and I'm fairly sure the systems that Red Hat has you touching for the exams are not these like super, behemoth systems that have terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data. I may be wrong, but I would like to think they aren't going to give you stuff that's going to take, the whole 4 hours of the exam to do the relabeling of SE Linux. So it has rebooted successfully. Let's go back to our command line in the SSH window, see if we can log in. It'll be a little bit easier to see on the video here. So SSH root at lab server 2, and we'll try monkey123 with our capital M, make sure it's secure, and success, we are in. Using the rescue kernel, I'm trying to remember, I'm fairly sure I had a system at my work where I needed to reset root, and for whatever reason, I could not do it from just like the regular kernel. I had to use rescue kernel to do that, and it was the same thing. I would just do rd.break and have it do its thing, but it worked for there. I would say on the exam, if you have to reset root, which I imagine you're probably going to have to, of course, if I knew I couldn't tell you, but that's like a low-hanging, fruit, easy to grade, because, hey, does the system log in as root as intended? If not, fail the exam kind of thing. So we'll probably have to do that. And just know if it doesn't work for the original kernel, and if you have a rescue kernel available, you might need to use that. So for the assessment here, I think I'm ready to go for resetting a root password, or at least hopefully I am. I haven't learned this wrong. If you found this video useful, make sure you do click like. I want to thank returning subscribers again for watching another video and invite you to subscribe if you haven't yet. Thanks again for your time, and I will see you the next time.